All right. Well, last week we started a new series called Level Up. We kicked off the new year. It's 2020. It's January the 12th. That's crazy. Like half of January is gone, and it feels like we're still in 2019 to me. But we kicked off 2020 last week with the series called Level Up, and the idea is this: that you may be entering this new year and this new decade with some attitudes, some approaches to this year where you're saying, I want to grow, I want to improve in this area of my life or that area of my life. And a lot of times we do that at the beginning of a year, and quite possibly you're feeling like that right now. The question I asked you last week, and you can go back and listen to it on our website or on Facebook Live, but the question I asked was this: would you be willing in 2020 to make your faith your top priority? Would you be willing to put your relationship with God at the top of the list, not just on a list with a bunch of other things at the top of the list together, but would you be willing to put your faith, your relationship with God, number one? Would you be willing to start there and then let everything else fall from there? That could mean a lot of different things for you. It could mean a new approach to how you pray or a new approach to how you read the Bible. It could be that you're returning to faith for the first time in a long time, and it could be that you're just going to say, okay, I'm going to prioritize my experience at church. I'm going to start to come regularly. I'm going to begin to maybe start to read the Bible and see what it has to say, or maybe I'm going to join in with a group and start to be encouraged by some other people. There are a lot of ways that can happen, but would you be willing to make your faith a top priority? And a lot of you, I think, said, yes, I want to do that. Let's do that together in 2020. Now, when we talk about areas of our life that you may want to level up, you may want to grow in, you may want to ask God, hey, would you help me in this area of my life? You don't get very far with talking about that without talking about relationships. Without saying, I want to grow in relationships in my life. And the way you might say it is, I really want to grow in my marriage this year. I want to have a better marriage. Or you might say, I would like to improve my friendships. I'd like to have more friendships, or I'd like to have better friendships. And I feel like I've neglected those in my life, and I want to add those in, and I want to step in and lean in and prioritize these places, these people in my life. You might say, I'd love to have a better relationship with my son. Or I'd love to have a better relationship with my brother. Or I'd love to have just a better connection with my dad, or with my daughter, or with my mom. And maybe that's how you think about it, but it all comes down to relationships. You might be a high school student or middle school student sitting here today, and you might be going, this is not relevant to me. It actually is. So I'm going to invite you to think about this, because you all have friends, you have a friend group, and guess what? You're all in a family, for better or for worse. And so you have relationships around you, and I bet that there are some of those that you would like to see improve. I bet there are some of those that you would like to see get better. So we're going to talk today about what it looks like to level up in your relationships, and really what the Bible has to say, because it is amazing how practical the Bible is when it comes to this area of our life. Now, if I ask you this morning, what's the key? What's the key to relationships? You would all have some amazing answers, and you might say something like, well, the key to relationships is communication. It's communication. Every relationship, it revolves around communication, and you would be right. That would be absolutely one of the keys to great relationships. You might say a key to great relationships is respect. I just believe it's respect. When you respect me and I respect your values, and then we can have the basis for a great relationship, and that would be right too, right? You might say commitment is the key to relationship. You might say sacrifice. It's sacrifice. That's the key to a great relationship. All those things are true. But I would say at the foundational level, even beneath those things, there's something else. And it's simply love. What you're really saying is love. Good relationships require that I love people. People around me that I care about, people around me that I love, people around me maybe even that I don't love. Good relationships require that I love people. But think about the way that we use the word love. Think about the way we use that word. It gets confusing. I think it can get confusing because a typical husband could say to his wife, I love you. I love you. And in the same sentence, he could say, and I also love that set of golf clubs I got earlier this year. I love it. I love that new driver that I'm hitting. And I also love Chick-fil-A. I love Chick-fil-A, and I love you. And I'm sorry to bring up Chick-fil-A, by the way, on a Sunday, right? It's closed, just in case you get hungry. But we use that word in some weird ways and in some sometimes confusing ways. And we've grown up in some thinking about love in some ways that maybe aren't always helpful. I'll just share this with you because of my age and when I grew up in the 80s and especially like early 80s, right? The first thing that I think about when I think about love growing up was this. The Love Boat. Any fans of the Love Boat? The only people that laughed at that were people my age or older, right? The Love Boat. Exciting and new, right? Come aboard. No one? Thank you. I know you, yes. Be proud that you know that song. All the rest of you were like, what are you talking about? But the Love Boat, it was a show in the early 80s. And what happened on the Love Boat was that people would come on board the Love Boat and they would, on a 3 or 4 day cruise, be strangers coming in and leave happily ever after, married or connected or in love. And that was what love was. And when I was a kid growing up, I thought, yeah, the love. What is love? Well, it's like the Love Boat. It's like the Love Boat. And we have all these misconceptions that love is simply a romantic thing. That love is soft. It's just soft and it's kind of weak. And it just makes me uncomfortable even. Some of us feel that way when it comes to that word. And because we are confused in some ways in our world about love, it leads us into some weird places sometimes in relationships and in life. Sometimes the idea of love leads us to maybe you end up holding on too long, or maybe you overlook dangerous patterns of behavior. In fact, if you're a therapist or you've been in therapy or counseling, or if you know some counselors, you've probably heard this. So this is what happens in the counseling room a lot. Like a woman might come in who's in an abusive relationship, emotionally or mentally or even physically abusive relationship, and she struggles to leave because she ends up feeling like, well, but he loves me. He's doing that, yeah, but he still loves me, and so we're still going to try to make this work, even if he's consistently hitting her. And from the outside looking in, you're going, how does that happen? But it's very easy to get into these relationships of codependency that don't have anything to do with real love. No wonder we are confused in our culture when it comes to love. We think that it's primarily an emotion, don't we? We think love is a feeling. And all the music that we hear about love backs that up. It's a feeling, it's an emotion, right? It's this sense, this emotional sense of warmth in my heart, when it is primarily an action. We think it's an emotion, but it is primarily an action, which means it's not just a feeling, it's a decision. Love is a decision to be made. And that goes beneath the feelings, that goes deeper than just that sense of I love you. It's a decision. When I talk to couples who are either going to get married or are in a marriage, when you stand in front of one another and you're making promises to one another on your wedding day, what you're saying is, I promise to love you beyond the feelings. I promise to decide. I am deciding today that I am going to love you. Love is a decision underneath all of the feelings, because the feelings come and go. But what you're saying in a marriage, in a healthy marriage, is I'm deciding to love you no matter what. No matter what. What does that kind of love look like? My boys are at Huff High School, and they do a lot of musicals and theater productions there. So last year, Christopher was involved in Fiddler on the Roof. And so I saw that a bunch of times over the course of a couple days this last year. And there's one particular scene in Fiddler on the Roof where there's an older guy and an older woman. They're married, Tevye and Golda, and his wife is named Golda. Tevye, her husband, asks if she still loves him. And they've been married 25 years. And what she says basically is, she says, for 25 years, I've washed your clothes. For 25 years, I've cooked your meals, I've cleaned the house, I've given you children, I've milked your cow. And she asked them, if that's not love, what is? And she's got a point, doesn't she? She has a point. Love shows up in action, not just in words and not just in feelings. Maya Angelou says it this way. She says, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. Look at their actions, not just their words. Look at the decisions that they're making, not simply their feelings. Now, I believe that she's pointing to a truth that comes out of the Bible. That actually comes out of the Bible. I think she's just pointing to a truth that comes out of the Bible, and it's just something that's true. It's just, and this is regardless of whether you're someone who says, I believe what the Bible has to say or not, regardless of whether you're somebody who even says, I don't know about this God thing. She's pointing to something that is true and that you can hold on to and latch onto wherever you are. So I want to share this passage from the book of 1 Corinthians this morning, and it's called Corinthians. It's in the New Testament, and a guy named Paul wrote it. He wrote most of the New Testament, and it was a letter to the church in a town called Corinth. Now, Corinth was really a metropolitan city. There was a lot going on. There was a lot of cultures interacting with each other, and there was a lot of confusion when it came to relationships. There was a lot of confusion when it came to what love really is. In fact, it's very much like our culture today. And he writes them, and it's so important that he spends a ton of time on relationships, a ton of time talking about how do we care for one another. What do we do when it comes to how we interact with one another? Because he saw all kinds of things going on that were negative, that were destructive patterns of behavior. And he was saying, no, you know what? Because of Jesus, because of who he is, because of what he did, now this kind of life is possible. And he paints this picture. He paints a beautiful picture. And in fact, if you've been to a wedding recently, you might have heard this passage read. You may have only heard it read in weddings. So I want to talk to us today as a church about what it looks like to love well, beyond our misconceptions often of what it actually is. So we're looking at 1 Corinthians chapter 13 this morning, and it starts like this. If I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I'm only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains, but do not have love, I'm nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. So I want to talk to those of us who are considering ourselves Christians this morning. If you're calling yourself a Christ follower, and if that's not you today, you get to listen in on an inside conversation, because so many of us in the church, like a lot of people in the church, need to hear this. A lot of churches need to hear this. What he's saying is finding success without growing in love is worthless. He says you can find all kinds of success, and if you don't grow in love, it doesn't mean anything. He says you can have all kinds of spiritual insight and knowledge. And there are a lot of us in the church who work at knowing more, at getting, making sure I know so much of the Bible and knowing, getting all the questions right. And you can have spiritual insight, he says, and knowledge, and have it without love, and it's meaningless. It's meaningless. None of that matters, he says, if you're not growing in your love. And then he says this, he says, you can give. This is kind of amazing. You can give everything to the poor. You can give everything away. And if you do it without love, it gains nothing. We measure success in our society by things like how many A's you're getting on your report card, or how many A's you're not getting. I was talking with my daughter about this the other day because our school uses, in high school, middle school, elementary school, I think elementary school now, we use PowerSchool, which is this system for tracking grades. Back in our day, it was just you got the report card at the end of the semester, and then you found out after the fact how you're doing, unless you got a call from the teacher in the middle of the semester, which was not good at all either. You didn't really know how you were doing, right? Now, you can check it every second of every day if you want to, and it can change as teachers input grades, and it can go up and down. And what we were talking about was how we had seen this study that showed that the average high school girl checks their grades in PowerSchool not like once a day, it was once after every class. because teachers will input grades and there's so much concern and anxiety about their GPA and what their grades are doing that they find themselves attached to that number in there. It's amazing, isn't it? We measure our success by those things. We measure our success by which colleges are going to tell us yes, or which colleges are going to tell us no. We measure success by how much money somebody decided to pay you for your particular set of skills. We measure success by how far you've gone in your particular industry that you're in. And we often live and die by that standard. And often it is not fair, isn't it? Because there are so many things around all of those issues that are out of our control. There are so many things about that standard that are beyond your particular means of control. So the only thing that you can control really is yourself, right? Like you can't control someone else's feelings. You can't control how someone else is going to treat you. You can't control what your company is going to do. You can't really control what your kids in a lot of ways are going to do. You can't control anything but yourself and how you act and how you react. And so Paul is saying, hey, there's a new measuring stick here. If you're someone who follows Jesus, there's a new measuring stick that you have, and this should come as a challenge and a relief. It should come as a challenge and some encouragement too. There's a new measuring stick that matters. This matters more than anything else. It's this question: do I have a larger or smaller capacity for love? Am I growing in my ability to love other people, and not just the people who love me? You know what Jesus said about that? He said, hey, if you just love the people who love you, you're just like everybody else. You're just like everybody else. That's really not a big deal. If you love people who love you, that's easy. It's loving the people who don't. It's loving your enemies, he said. It's loving the people who don't love you back. It's loving people who don't believe what you believe. It's loving people who don't believe what you think they ought to believe. It's loving people who don't look like you, who don't act like you, who don't even smell like you. It's loving those people. Do I have a larger or smaller capacity for love? That's the question. That's the measuring stick. That's the new measurement that Paul is laying out. He's saying, can we measure ourselves by that and not by all these other things? Because that is what really matters. And so he says, let's define it. So let's define it. Let's define love by what it really means, not just the soft, squishy stuff, but by a different standard. And when I do this, he turns a corner in this passage. He says, here's what love is like. Here's what that love is actually like. I want you to ask a question of yourself as I walk through this. And the question is this: is this kind of love that Paul describes what defines my relationships with people? Both people who love me and people who don't. Is this what defines my relationships with people right now? Okay? So he's going to paint this picture of what love really is. And here's how he starts. He says, first of all, this: love is patient. It's patient. And this kind of patience is like God's patience. It's God's patience for you and for me. There's a wonderful story in the book of Luke, chapter 15, that Jesus tells to describe this patience. And I would encourage you to dig into it at some point, but it's called The Prodigal Son. It's the story of the lost son, the prodigal's son, and it's about a father who has a son, and his son comes to the father and he basically says, hey, give me my inheritance now. I'm not going to wait till you die, which is the typical thing of the day. He says, give it to me now. And so the father, amazingly, does. And the son takes it and he leaves. He leaves the house. He leaves the umbrella of his father's love and care, and he walks away saying, I know best. I know how to live my life best, and I don't need you anymore. So what does the father do? He waits. The son goes off, and the Bible says he squanders all of it. He wastes all of it, and he ends up in a place where he's in a dead-end road with less than his father's servants have around the house. He doesn't even have anything to eat. He in fact is so hungry that he's jealous of what the pigs around him are eating. And so he wakes up and he finally says, oh my goodness, I've got to go back, but there's no way I can go back how I was. So I can go back at least maybe as one of my father's servants, because those are the ones who are getting taken care of, and I can at least, go back as one of them. They have much more than I do now. And so Jesus paints this incredible picture of the son walking up the road to his house And he doesn't even get to the door. He's still on the road when the father comes rushing out, and he runs down this dirt pathway, and he meets his son there, like he'd been watching for him, right? He'd been looking, been waiting for that day patiently. But he saw him, and he couldn't contain his love and his joy anymore, so he runs out and he meets the son and throws his arms around him, and the son starts his rehearsed speech about how he is not good enough to be a son anymore. Could he just be one of the servants? And he will have none of it. The father will have none of it. He welcomes him in. He throws a robe on his back. He puts a ring on his finger. He says, let's have a party because this son of mine who was lost has been found. Love is patient. Love is patient. What does it look like for you and me to love holding off judgment from someone who wrongs me? Can I do that with people who have wronged me? Love is patient. And then he says this, love is kind. It's kind. And I think too often in the church, we equate that to being nice. And a lot of you are nice. Some of you aren't, but most of you are really nice. But nice is overrated. I love you nice people, but it's overrated a little bit. And we tend to equate, a lot of times, following Jesus with just being nice. It's not just being nice, but it is about being kind. It is about being kind. And kindness is this idea that I want to show you some blessing that's undeserved. It might be undeserved, but I'm going to show it to you anyway. Kindness is going out of my way to show undeserved blessing to someone. Love is kind. Love is kind. And then he says, love also, it doesn't envy, it doesn't boast, and it's not proud. This idea of selflessness, taking myself out of the equation. And I believe selflessness is really hard, actually, because my natural tendency is to be selfish and ask the question, what do I need, right? What do I need today? What do I need to get out of this today? What's in it for me today? But selflessness is this disciplined approach to life that asks when we get up in the morning, okay, the question I'm going to ask today is what's better for you? That's the first question I'm going to ask. What's better, not for me, what's better for you? You know how a marriage works really well is when you're asking that about her and she's asking that about you. What's better for you? It's a discipline though, isn't it? Like that takes discipline, that takes work, that takes effort. But that is the approach of selflessness where it doesn't envy, doesn't boast, isn't proud. It's just this sense of like, what is going to be better for you? Then he says it does not dishonor others. It's not self-seeking. Love is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. There's just this sense of being humble in that, isn't there? Can you imagine that, keeping no record of wrongs? Do you guys keep records of wrongs? I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but yeah, I do. Some of you might even actually have records of wrongs. That would be incredible if you did. I won't even judge you. I just want to know later if you do, like if you actually write those down, because that would be amazing. And then we would probably have to have a conversation about it. But if you don't write it down, you're keeping it up here, aren't you? Isn't our tendency to keep it up here? Can you remember the things that people did to you 20, 30 years ago that were wrong to you? You can't you? I bet each of us could pinpoint something back in our lives, even if you're 12 years old or if you're 80 years old or somewhere in between this morning, where you could pinpoint something a long time ago that someone did that was wrong to you. And you hold on to that. Love keeps no record of wrongs. That's hard, isn't it? It's hard, but it's necessary, because when I hold on to a record of wrongs, the only person that hurts, it's not the person who did it. They don't know. They don't know the record I keep. You know who it hurts? Me. It just hurts me. So there's this sense of love, real love, strong, powerful, Jesus-like love. It doesn't keep a record of wrongs, because there's just got to be this attitude not only of forgiveness, but an attitude of health for me too. Like when I hold on to things, it just eats away at me and it doesn't help anyone. There's this humility that comes with that, isn't there? And then he says this, love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It rejoices with the truth. Love is powered by truth. I love this because love tells the truth. And we got to be people who are truth tellers. In other words, love, real love, doesn't hide for fear of hurting feelings. You ever held back something that you wanted to say, but you didn't say it just because you knew it was going to hurt somebody's feeling? Now, sometimes that's wise, right? But other times, it's time to say the truth. And we need to be people who are bold and speak the truth to one another. And love, real love, speaks truth. I mentioned this last week. There's a group of us that are reading the New Testament together for the month of January. And over and over again, when you see Jesus, we're kind of in the Gospels right now, when you see Jesus interacting with people, he's speaking truth after truth after truth after truth. And it is incredible, like how on point he is every single time. And every time, it's not out of a desire for vengeance or revenge. It's not out of a desire to hurt somebody. It's actually out of a desire to love somebody well. Sometimes that truth is difficult to hear, but we still need to be people who are powered by the truth. Now, it also isn't cruel. It's not about saying things that are cruel. There's this acronym I want to give you this morning. You may have seen it, but I want to remind you of it if you've seen it already. And it's like this. If you're thinking about saying something to someone, here's the things you need to probably be thinking through. First is this. You got to think about it first. So is it true? Is it true? Is what I'm about to say true? And the second word is this. Is it helpful to say this? Is it helpful to this person? If I've got to say something, I feel like I need to say something, is it helpful to this person? The third word is this. Is it inspiring? Does it inspire somebody to do something different? The fourth word is it necessary? Is it necessary for me to say the thing that I want to say right now? If not, maybe it's not the right time to say it. The fifth word is this. Is it kind? Is it kind? Is it kind in the best sense of the word kind? Not just, is it nice? Not just, is it friendly? Is it kind? Do I have this other person's best interest in mind? Think before you speak, right? But we got to be people who build our words around truth. And love is about speaking the truth into people's lives. And if you want to level your relationships up, maybe it's time for you to start speaking the truth. And then he says this, it always protects. It always trusts. Love always trusts. It always hopes. It always perseveres. He's saying love is so optimistic. It's so optimistic. It just always, in all these things, it protects, it trusts, it hopes, it perseveres. It's going to last. And he concludes it with saying love never fails, a sense of victory. Like it never fails. Real love never, ever fails. So as I walk through and describe that to you, does that kind of love sound familiar? Does it sound familiar at all? Does it sound like anybody you may have heard of or anybody you know? Because the greatest example that we've ever had of that kind of love is Jesus himself. In fact, you can go through that passage and replace the word love with the name Jesus. And what you see is this, that Jesus is patient, that he's kind. Jesus does not envy. He doesn't boast. He's not proud. Jesus does not dishonor others. He's not self-seeking. He's not easily angered. Jesus, listen, keeps no record of your wrongs. He doesn't delight in evil, but he rejoices with the truth. Jesus always protects. He always trusts. He always hopes. He always perseveres. Jesus never fails. Perfect love's found in him. One of the things that he said to his followers, so this is in the book of John chapter 13, he says, but everyone will know that you're my disciples if you are really successful. No. Everyone will know you're disciples if you make a lot of money and impress a bunch of people and build a big church. Everybody will know you're my disciples if you put on an incredible performance, an impressive show. No, he says, everyone will know that you're my disciples if you love one another. That's like his evangelism strategy. You know what I'm saying? Like that's how he reaches, he's saying, I'm going to reach the world. We're going to reach the world this way. They're going to know that you're my disciples if you love one another by the way that you love each other. That's how powerful this kind of love is. They'll know you're my disciples if you love one another well. So we assess everything in our lives. We assess our financial positions. We assess our job performance. We assess our physical fitness, don't we? We assess all kinds of things in our lives. We take tests if we're in school. But what I want to do now is ask you this. Could you assess where you are when it comes to love? If Paul's saying it's the most important thing, it's beyond anything else, like how well you love one another. Could you take a minute with me? I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. Would you just assess yourself when it comes to love? So a couple of questions for you. One of them is this. Am I growing in my ability to love without conditions? Am I growing in my ability to love without expecting someone else to do something for me first? Or without expecting anybody to just return the favor? Or without, I'm going to do something for you, then you're going to do something for me later, and it's just going to be like a favor that you owe me. None of that. Am I growing in my ability to love without condition? A related question. Can I love others when it doesn't benefit me? Can I love others when it just doesn't benefit me? And then a third question is this. Is my love for those who are far from Jesus right now, is it growing? Is that growing? Or am I finding myself more judgmental or more angry? Or is my love for people that are far from Jesus growing? You know, I firmly believe that this is not about trying harder, okay? This is not about walking away with a list of things I need to do more or do better or work harder at. It doesn't work that way, thankfully. Because every time I try harder, I tend to fail. But what Jesus is saying is, hey, I want to partner with you. So when you connect your life in with me, you're connecting in with this river that never really ends. And you're entering into the flow of this river, and this river is going to flow actually through you onto other people around you. And so what Jesus is saying, what I would like to do is I would like to invite you in to a connection, a relationship with me. And then I'd like to partner with you to love people well. Would you be willing to do that? I'd like to partner with you to love the people around you in your family well, to love the people that you're connected to by blood well, but also to love the people that are in this church community. I would like to love people through you well. And then there are other people that you're in contact with that the river of your life touches, and they're at your school, and there are people that are hurting there. And I want for you to be a conduit of my love into people at your school that you don't know. I mean, you just don't know what's going on in someone's life. Would you be willing to do that? And then he's saying, there are people that you live beside that you haven't really gotten to know. Would you be willing to love them well? There are clients that you visit with that I've put in your place for a reason. Would you care for them well? Would you allow me to love them through you? There are people in your life who are very far away from me that I just long to return like the prodigal son. Would you love them by letting me love them through you? That's possible in your life and my life. That's possible in our church. You know where it starts with? It starts with recognizing that, oh my goodness, I'm the prodigal son. I'm the prodigal daughter. I'm the one that ran away and returned, and he's lavished his love on me, and it's undeserved, and his kindness and his forgiveness is amazing. And I just get to enjoy that. I get to enjoy that. That's where it starts. I'm going to invite you to pray with me, to maybe reconnect yourself, maybe to spend a minute in the silence of the room, being quiet with God and letting him speak to you. Maybe it's about praying for somebody in your life who you know, I kind of need to love them better, and I need to ask God for some help. So let's do that now, okay? Will you pray with me? God, maybe there are even names this morning that come to our mind of people that are hard to love, and some of us are going to think of those names and then go, oh my goodness, I don't want to do that. God, would you convict us of our pride this morning? Would you convict us of the lack of humility that we sometimes have? Would you convict us of the sense of hopelessness that we sometimes have? And allow us to put those things to the side. God, we need a relationship with you for this to work. We need the flow of your mighty river in our lives, a river of forgiveness and grace and mercy and love and power and strength. God, I think about this kind of love and specifically the kind of love that you showed that took you to the cross, that didn't cause you to run away, that didn't keep you from doing the hard thing, the difficult thing, the thing that mattered most. That's the kind of love that you displayed for us, that you showed for us. And so God, as we see that, as we live in the reflection of the cross, may we love people the way that you love them, with even just a glimpse of how you love them. May we be able to ask the question, what's better for them today, not just what's better for me. And maybe there are specific people right now that you're bringing into our minds that, and you're asking us to step in, to lean in instead of to walk away. And would you show us how to speak truth? Would you show us how to speak love? Would you show us how to be kind in the best way? Give us your strength and your power to love people well. Even those who disagree with us, even those who don't seem like they like us, even those who we have struggles with, maybe especially those. We thank you, Father, for your love for us, and we pray in the awesome, loving, compassionate name of Jesus. Amen.